I know I'm early, but I'm just going to get straight into it because I'm pissed. I am, really upset at this whole censorship thing, and I don't think people really understand that they should be too. Collective Shout, yes, first started going after, some very, let's just say easy targets, low hanging fruit. They got rid of some very, questionable games off of itch and off of Steam. Well, I don't think people realize how loose this really goes and what leverage they used. They leveraged a very tiny group that probably had some close ties to the payment processors of Visa, MasterCard, which I don't think people really understand how much power Visa, MasterCard have. Try and buy anything without using Visa or MasterCard. You really can't. Look at your debit card. It's got the Visa logo on it. You can't get a debit card that doesn't have that, or a MasterCard logo. But those are the same company. Right. What you can or can't buy. Do you understand that? How long before, and this isn't hyperbole, how long before creeper stalker stories that are narrated on YouTube are censored because they're glorifying the violence? They're glorifying women being stalked. Some of the backbone of YouTube videos. Yeah, but American Express is very rare. Well, you also have Discovery, but they don't work as payment processors. They're just a charge card, as in American Express, or a credit card, as in Discovery. They don't process payments. You're allowed to use that card in very specific places. Discovery is trying to get bigger and trying to fight back, but Visa had the stranglehold on debit cards for so long that it allowed them to get so big. And now, how long before they start targeting things like movies, TVs? If you can't process payment, you can cripple Disney. Right. Most people do. I don't think people really understand how bad this is. Tabletop role-playing games, because they can be used to depict violence, they'll be isolated, destroyed. And I think a lot of people don't understand that this is also linked in with the whole Diamond Publishing thing. The whole Diamond Publishing going under. They're distributors of comic books, tabletop RPG books, and comic books. Wait, I already said comic books. They're distributors of a lot of things. Well, and actually, this might affect you too, Brando. Yes, but it also goes back to the old satanic panic. But now with LGBTQ also in the mix, that's a very hot button political topic. How long before they start censoring that? Itch has already removed a bunch of games that involve either gay, lesbian, or trans because they have to. You want to talk about losing representation. Let these white supremacist assholes, because that's really what it is. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's really what it is in my mind. Is that they're white supremacist, Christian right-wing assholes that are telling you what you can and cannot watch by telling you what you can and cannot pay for. Right. All they're fueling is an underground black market for this stuff, which will actually make people get more bold. And I don't think they really understand that. And it all comes down to because they can't control themselves. This is all the way back in kindergarten. Because we can't punish the individual, we have to punish the group. This is the dumbest shit ever. Sure, rape and incest porn, take that out. It's not worth it. until you realize that, oh, wait, but then they're going to take another step, and then another step, and another step. Like, wait a minute. I'm not trying to advocate for this stuff, but where do you stop the censorship? Where do you go? Yeah. Well, and it's just like I said in the description. Censorship, no, it's more like I don't like it and neither should you. Like you shouldn't have access to something I don't like because it instills in me some feelings that I don't like, So even though we can turn our head off and realize that it's just fantasy, it's just pixels, it's just words, it's just images on a page, not really happening, because they can't, choose between fantasy and reality means we don't get the choice. Because that's really what it is. Because they don't understand that it's their problem, not ours. I mean, especially when you look at what happened during the Satanic Panic, and that, oddly enough, all these things that were supposedly starting violence, causing violence, when they censored it, when they started going after it, crime rates increased, not decreased. It's funny how that works. If people have a social outlet, a socially acceptable outlet for what they feel inside. NSM? Never mind. I know who you're talking about. Right. Well, and I think people should have their parades. I think people should have the civil right to do what they want to do. But when you bring violence into the equation, those people need to be arrested. You're going to throw rocks, arrest them. This isn't civil disobedience. Right. We're not censoring the real world. We're not censoring things that people are actually doing. We're censoring what people are perceived to be doing. But how long before it actually happens? Well, no, I mean, even that, Tom, I don't think you're understanding. I think people, and this might be a hot topic or, a hot take, right? But I think people should be allowed to portray their Nazi propaganda. I think they should be allowed to sit there and talk about it. Do you know why? Because if you censor them, then you have to censor Black Lives Matter. Then you have to censor everybody else. Now, as soon as you cross that bridge into violence, illegal territory, you arrest whoever's doing it. That's simple as that. Right. Yeah, but I mean, you have to, the only way to weed out the people, the undesirables, as some people put it, in your society is to let them speak. If you censor them and don't let them speak, you don't know who the bad people are. I know that sounds weird and counterintuitive, but let them talk so you know who to avoid. Because that's my part of freedom of speech. I don't have to listen to you. I can walk away. It's just like if somebody's walking down the street naked. I don't care. I don't have to look at them. I can turn away. Or if I like what I'm looking at, I can stare. That's my freedom of speech. If you're going to walk down the street naked and then bitch at me because I stared at you, that's your problem, not mine. I mean, simple as that. You make a choice. That's a consequence of your choice. We should allow, white supremacists to talk. Not because I want them indoctrinating people, not because I want them to sit there and talk, stir up people, so we know who to avoid, so we know where they stand, so we know what they're using to talk about, so we can counter it with rational discourse. But if you start censoring people, they're only, yeah. But if you're censoring people, yeah, exactly. Well, don't forget that women do it too. It's not just men. Women talk in such a way that, they're the best birth control they've ever had. Because abstinence is 100% effective, except for in certain religious cases. I don't think people really understand the slippery slope of these things. It's not a gender issue. It's not a race issue. Right? But a lot of people take it as such. A lot of people say, oh, well, most white supremacists are just men. No, those are the ones that you see, because what does a white supremacist believes? The woman stays home. She's the dishwasher, the clothes washer. She's the child rearer. So you're not going to see her in public. You don't know how many there really are. How many of these women really are out there, because they're not allowed to speak. But we can look really closely at the guys that are speaking up and see how they, right? And see how they treat their women and see if there's any abuse involved. Because, oh, wait, that's illegal. Regardless of if the person files charges or not, assaulting someone, and if you can show it and prove it, even if you're a disinterested third party, and you can show evidence, that's still illegal. That's still a crime. People forget that. You don't have to press charges. You can drop charges, but if the police witness or a third party witness the violence and have it recorded or something like that, and they can show real proof, that's illegal. And I don't think people really understand how hard this is going to go. And while I don't know if there's any pushback, I've heard a lot of people talk about it, but where's the other groups that are setting up to counter this collective shout? Where's the Gamergate bros that are getting their games removed? Of course, they target this in such a way that it makes it impossible to defend. They think. But when I last looked at Nevada's statistics, this was before 2020, before a lot of the brothels shut down. They had legalized prostitution, even though it was on the downswing. But you know what crime was very small in Nevada? Like extremely small? Rape. Because it was legal. Not just legal, but the women actually had, job protection. And the men that were doing it too, because it's both. But prostitutes get protection. They aren't controlled by some pimp who's outside the law. They're controlled by somebody that's within the law. That's something that I think a lot of people don't really understand. If you legalize prostitution, that means the prostitutes can hold their pimps accountable. They can get their actual wages. They can file for unemployment when things go wrong or when they want to try and get out. They have choices now. When you remove that choice, they're stuck in it. They're basically slaves to the pimp. Now, when I'm talking about collective shout, you look at what they're doing. Guess how much crime is going to explode and how much it's going to let nefarious people exploit others. Right? Well, I don't think people really understand that, you would remove a lot of sex trafficking if you just legalized prostitution. Because then these people that were sex trafficked could actually go to the police without incriminating themselves. Everybody thinks it's going to increase sex trafficking. But how could it when these people could actually report it? without suffering consequences, without suffering issues. I think you guys get my point. Right? But, then you look at this censorship. You look at this slippery slope. And like I said, how long before narrators are being censored because they can't talk about these stalker cases that are meant to educate people on how to look for it, how to react, who to report it to. Yet it glorifies the violence against unprotected people, women, children, whatever. So you're not going to be able to talk about it, making it thereby easier for the criminals to act. It's just like my feelings on the anonymity of the internet. I think we should remove the anonymity from the internet. I know a lot of people are afraid of that, but the simple fact is that just because you're exposed, it also means the other person is exposed. It's now a public forum, not a private forum. And I don't think people really understand that when you have the risk of somebody actually knowing who you are, finding out, that's why it's so illegal to dox someone. Because you have level playing field. Yes, you have a level playing field. That's the scary part. And that's why so many people advocate against losing the anonymity of the internet, because they're afraid. How many Redditors would suddenly stop talking their hate, stop talking about these extreme things if they weren't anonymous? What's the scariest thing for 4chan? To lose the anonymity. And these people barking all the time about how, they can't lose that we have to keep this hidden. Why? What are you doing wrong? What are you doing that you think people, you'll lose friends and family? So your friends and family never know who you really are? Or are you putting on a mask when you go on the internet and they'd laugh at you if they find out, you're really just a middle-aged white guy in his parents' basement that can't seem to get over being out of high school? Where does this really go? Where do you stop? How do you sit and look at this and see it as anything but bad that they're censoring freedom of speech by way of a payment processor, not by laws, not by anything, but by leveraging a very small community to have outsized power? You want to talk about fascism and dictatorships? That's what that is. When you control the money, when you control your ability to buy and sell whatever you want, that's the start of a fascist dictatorship. Pure and simple. That's the easiest way to start one, and that's what they're trying to do. This will eventually leverage into political control, because suddenly, you can't talk certain politics because that's violence or leads to violence. And that one might be hyperbole, but I don't think so. I think people are going to try and do it. The other problem is that Collective Shout opens the door. Because if they realize how easy it is, and by they, I mean whoever else, whatever small group, to leverage 70,000 people at most into getting Visa to change their habits, to tell you what you can and can't do. Wait till somebody else comes along and it's LGBTQ. Or it's white people. Or it's brown people. Where does it stop? If you can start censoring something because it's deemed inappropriate, all you have to do is deem something inappropriate. And that could be as much as McDonald's. Oh, McDonald's, was built in the 50s, so it was racist. Even though you can't really say that it was racist at all. You can't even really prove it. But if you associate it that way, Suddenly, Visa pulls their support from McDonald's. Now you can only pay in cash. How many people carry cash now? And I don't even think it's smart to carry cash. Somebody tries to rob me, all they're going to get is my cards. Take them. I'm not going to fight you. I'm just going to go home and cancel all my cards. And I'm going to refund all those charges. Simple as that. But I carry cash. You can't track that. I can't get that money back. We sit here and look, and we're living in a very scary moment. This is one of those times in history that probably never gets really written down, because people don't understand what happened. This is that slippery slope. I mean, it was only a week ago that they banned the rape and incest porn. Now itch.io has removed every adult game. How long before it's violent themes? One of their things is you can't depict women in I don't want to say stressful situations, but in potentially abusive situations, potentially violent situations. So you can't have women in video games. Just straight up, you can't. Why take the risk? You can't even have them as protagonists. You can't have a woman kicking ass and taking names. You can't have a main female protagonist because she might be put in a stressful, possibly abusable situation. And I don't think they're really thinking, because, there have been whole TV shows. Law and Order, Special Victims Unit. Mostly focusing on female and child crime. That show would be censored. Done. You can't have it. Because Visa is the payment processor. Because Visa is who all that money has to flow through. Yeah. Okay, you can't have women and children in TV shows. No, but you couldn't even portray a female. You couldn't have a guy dressed up as a female. You couldn't even go back to Kabuki. You couldn't go back to Shakespearean eras, because they're portraying a woman in a hazardous situation. So it will always be two guys on stage, whatever it is. This isn't empowering women. This is removing their power. We won't be sympathetic to their plight because we don't see them. And I don't mean like they're invisible. We just won't see them. This is ridiculous. Who cares about violence against men? Unless it's, white violence against people of color. Nobody cares. And even that's a lesser degree than violence among any of the other things. Nobody cares about violence among men. But we don't all deserve to be equal. Isn't that what they're proving? Is that, especially with the hate against white males. White males don't deserve to be equal. They prove that time and time again. Look at T. Doxing men, talking behind, corners. Gossiping about men. No verification, no anything like that. But think about it. The whole thing about T is that, all the women are filing lawsuits because they got doxxed. The very same thing that they were doing to these men. Like, according to their information, you could even look up their phone number. So we're talking like actual doxing. Right. No, I know that. I know that you're just showing the slippery slope. Hey, gossip. How's it going? We're talking about censorship and the slippery slope. and how Collective Shout is leveraging all of this newfound power against, I mean, we're just going back to the Satanic Panic. They're literally leveraging this against all forms of media. And if you look at their website, it's even worse. Like where they've done campaigns in the past and didn't get any traction, you bet they're going to revisit them. But now that they have the power with Visa, I don't think Visa really understands that all this is going to do is embolden like Discovery or Discover Card. It's going to embolden American Express to do a bigger push into becoming a payment processor because people are going to ask them. All Visa is doing is weakening their position. Well, I think that's why we have such problems in America, because we have sheltered people on both sides of that. You have the dick men that sit there and talk about, right, like because they're protected from being, racist, sexist assholes. And as soon as there's a little pushback, they become super pussies about it. They've been protected too from the consequences of their actions. This is a two-way street. We need to treat everybody as equal. Everybody. Collective Shout is a Australian group that decided to come together and basically try to censor everything they hate. Everything they hate. And this has been leveraged into some very destructive things that never went anywhere. Until they got a hold of somebody high up in Visa, and the first thing they banned was rape and incest porn games from Itch and Steam. Nobody complained. A few days later, Steam and Itch, I think, removed 30,000 games because they had adult themes. And they're in the process of removing every adult-themed game. Now, Collective Shout's, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's what's pissing me off. Something like 30,000, and it's stupid games that don't make any sense. Like, I think one of them was like a text-based game that showed nothing. It was just written out. And it got banned because it talked about women possibly being in dangerous situations. They had an unsuccessful campaign against Detroit Become Human because a storyline in there was about violence. Right. But we're all equal. I don't care what sexuality you are. I don't give a crap. One, I don't really need to know. Two, it shouldn't have any bearing on how I treat you or anyone else. Right. But with Detroit Become Human, there was a storyline in there because I guess it centers around police officers. Don't get me wrong. I've always wanted to play the game because I hear a lot about it, but I haven't played it yet. And they have a scenario in there where a husband is abusive towards his wife and child. You as the protagonist go in and take care of this in some manner or another. But because it portrayed the violence between the violence against the woman and child, they wanted that game censored. Not because it glorified the violence, but just because it showed it. Even though it was in a sympathetic light, as in you shouldn't be doing this. This is bad. So I don't really understand that. I mean, that means you can't talk about crime. True crime podcasts, gone. Like, absolutely gone. Because the ones that people like to hear about, Exactly. Because I don't think they care. What I'm saying is they have convinced themselves they care, but they don't care because they're making a knee-jerk reaction. This was the question of why didn't we censor, Mein Kampf, Hitler's book? Because we needed to understand the rhetoric of what we were facing. That's why that book is still available to buy in certain places. Not to glorify Hitler, but to understand the way he saw things. You might as well have, if you're going to censor Mein Kampf, you're going to have to censor, Diary of Anne Frank. Oh, wait, but they did. But, that's beside the point. If you censor, they censored Mark Twain because he used a word that was not a slur at the time to portray a black man's struggle in the South because he called him the name that they called him. Yeah. No, I totally understand. Not only that, using variant names to suicide and rape. Well, like I said before you joined, Gossip, the fact that during the 80s, during the Satanic Panic, if you don't know what I'm talking about, look it up. It was a big thing. Violence increased. Violent crimes increased the harder they, cracked down on the Satanic Panic. From music to games, tabletop games. They cracked down on all of this. Well, crime went up because people didn't have an outlet. They were frustrated. They were angry. They don't want to act out the violence. They want to act out solutions. And that's what I think people don't really understand. You have to put yourself in a certain situation to figure out what you do. Video games, fantasy allows that. Allows that release of feelings to find out how to react, what you would do. 99.9% of people use it as that. That 0.01% use it to plan out. Their numbers don't make sense. They're using an outsized power of leverage. And I don't think Visa and MasterCard really understand allowing collective shout to have this power is going to embolden so many other interest groups. Yeah. Well, no, the problem is, Tom, is that most survivors of rape understand what rape is, the word. It doesn't turn them into a hysterical, inconsolable mess. It's the people that have never experienced it. It's the people that don't really understand what it really is. That it's not just a violation of self, it's a violation of spirit. It is taking everything you are away. They don't understand that, and they don't want to know what that's like. It's scary to them. It is an unknown, so therefore they have to censor it. Just like how Galileo Galilei got censored. Because it was the unknown space. They were terrified of it, so they censored him. We've done this throughout history. But we never understand where it starts. And this is where it starts. Yeah. And that's what I'm saying is that that's the problem with rape, sexual assault, survivors, is that most people don't really understand that those are two different things. Rape is one thing, sexual assault is another. We use defined words for a reason. You shouldn't be making them generic. Yeah. What's up, Cryptic? How you doing, buddy? I like the new video. I love that story, and I love the way you told it, man. Perfect way to do it. censoring people because you don't believe the same way they do. It's like, I'm not gay. I am not going to censor somebody that is gay. Simple as that. They have a right to exist. They have a right to speak. They have a right to have their own media, their own things. Just don't bitch at me because I'm not watching it. Nice. Good. And I really don't understand. Right. And I'd apologize, but I think we need to be mad right now. There's nothing wrong with being angry at this. But we need to turn that anger into positive action. What can we do? And I mean positive action. I don't mean, get angry and, brigade them, or get angry and cause some kind of stupid violence or something like that. That's just going to make them into martyrs. What we need to do is find positive way around this. Oh, it was great. Like I told you, man, you have a great voice for that kind of stuff. Your voice is perfectly tailored. Right. No, they are. I mean, don't get me wrong, Rando. What I'm talking about, like, I've gone to drag shows. I think they're absolute fun. In Portland, there was this, I don't even know if it still exists, there was this place called Darcel's. I loved going there. It was so much fun. And you're right. Pride is for everyone. But not so much, what I mean is that, like, what I know that there was at one point a cable show or a cable network that was basically tailored towards LGBTQ plus. And I just didn't watch it because it wasn't really my thing. I think compilations would work pretty well. I wouldn't go much over, say, like, stick to the same roundabout as Raven, between 30 and 40 minutes. Somewhere in that neighborhood. I mean, as much as 45, Basically give people about an hour's worth of content with ads. Is really where I try to shoot for. Because those seem to be the most consistent. But once you hit over an hour, people start dropping off. Unless you're doing sleep compilations. And I think with the censorship of Collective Shout, I mean, YouTube's already started it. They have a whole place for YouTube Kids, but now they're also censoring, words like rape, words like suicide, words like this, saying you can't say them because some child might be listening. We already went through this with TV. Exactly. Yeah, hey, that would be good. I know you don't have a whole lot of time because you have an actual day job. I get so frustrated watching people in the censorship community. I mean, Tipper Gore did this. They started, Satanic Panic did this. They keep trying to censor stuff. Well, I mean, get into habit, get started. You can probably, I'm sure that, I mean, it's still going to be there. People do it all the time. There's plenty of them. And personally, I think your voice is better than some of them. Okay. I mean, and just to be honest, probably not into the, exact center of your target audience, Nine Tails. But I'm still going to support, read to see what you have to say, because I like knowing things from all different sides. I don't have to totally agree with someone to listen to them out. But I will call out BS when I see it. Not that your articles are BS. I'm just talking about, it's like I actually went to Collective Shout's website. I actually looked into what they were talking about. And their whole mission statement is it has nothing to do with what they're doing right now. Even worse, Tom, Collective Shout is an Australian group. They're not even American. We have people outside of America censoring an American company by way of payment processors. I mean, this might actually interest you, Cryptic, because suddenly FNAF isn't going to be possible because of the depiction of kids in terrifying situations. That the animatronics are basically made from the souls of kids. Well, that's child abuse. Can't have that censored. Oh, nice. It is. It is very much extortion. Collective Shout, Cryptic. Look them up. They're a terrible people that are censoring games. And what they want censored is so loose and so non-defined that even werewolf games. Like there's a game that I've played called Don't Escape. Because you turn into a werewolf, you're trying to lock yourself in a cabin to save the village. Well, you turn into a werewolf. Banned. Because it involves an animal in a compromising situation. Or it's because it's a human, animal hybrid. And I think Collective Shout didn't realize that they just pissed off a bunch of furries, and furries work in fintech. Sorry, financial technologies. Well, and it's because these people have been told this is bad, but they want to know more. Yeah, they do. They sound awful. I actually expected this to be the front of some weird religious male group because they're trying to basically hide all of the violence, everything like that. I just did. But no, their whole board is a bunch of women. And I don't think they really understand that to censor the way they're doing, they're actually reducing the power of women. You won't see women in media. You won't see women in... Yeah. Well, yeah, but they can pick and choose why they want you censored. You're going to be censored, but they're going to pick and choose why and how. And it's ridiculous. It's absolutely terrifying to see this power in action. Especially since there's no other recourse. We can't choose not to do business with Visa MasterCard. They are a worldwide, not just national, worldwide payment processor. Yeah. Oh, and trust me, politics will be next. So you won't even be able to know what political figures are actually advocating for. I mean, I hate to say it. This isn't hyperbole. We're looking at basically the same kind of propaganda that the Nazis started. This is how they started. Little things. Oh, that's not good. Oh, that's not good. And suddenly, 10 years later, guess what? Nothing but what the state says is good. See, you just hit on the big thing. Help protect the kids, my ass. If you wanted to protect the kids, you would enforce more rules on the parents, not on the public. Parents very much should protect the kids. But I also think parents should be held accountable for what they do. But we're not holding the parents accountable. We're holding public accountable for what kids have access to. Well, and this is why I think that, we should really enforce the rules of kids don't get on, what's up, Green Jeans? Social media. They should have a protected place for them in the electronic sphere in some way or another. But how do I put this? I really don't think kids should have social media. I don't think electronic games for kids should go outside of their neighborhood, their particular region. Right? Parents need to be more proactive in parenting. But here's the problem. How can they? When it takes 3 people's minimum wage job to afford even to think about having kids, how do you have time? Right? How does the average person have time to raise their kid properly? What it would require is actually to readdress how much things cost and how much people get paid. I mean, they want to talk about, yeah. You want to talk about the real issue behind all of this is that they don't want you talking about what's really going on in the world. But that's their choice as a parent. Again, they're going to have terrible kids. That's their fault. I think that certain protections need to be put in place to actually use CPS at a smaller level. I don't mean just take the kids away, but, maybe teach parents how to actually parent. Maybe actually show parents that you actually have to interact with your kid. That you have to take time out of your day to do things together. And yeah, when my kids got into teenage, they hated that. Not really, but to a certain degree, they, but I wanted to do this. Like, hey, this is family time. Your mom got home from work. We're going to sit down. We're going to sit and eat dinner together around the table. No TV, no electronics. Right. And here's where Darwinism goes into effect. Parents that have the opportunity to teach their kids that severely drop the ball are also showing that their kids are not going to be adequate partners, so their genes won't be passed on. You break the cycle. Or their genes won't be passed on until they grow up, until they learn better. There is still chance of change because parents aren't 100% responsible for what their kids do after they leave the house. You can blame your parents for certain things, but you're also an adult. And I think one of the major problems that we're having is that we keep removing, in certain ways, we keep removing what it means to be an adult. 18, you can go serve your country, but you can't drink a beer, you can't gamble, and you can't buy half the guns. There's so much decisions we took away from 18-year-olds that why are they called adults anyway? We're not holding them accountable, so why are we, and we keep talking about, people's brains aren't fully developed until they're 25. Well, I'm sure that as you keep moving that bar, now most of your adult decisions don't take effect until 21. Well, now they're not going to be fully developed until 30. Brains aren't fully developed till 25. Well, now it's 30. Because you're not making them develop. You're actually regressing or slowing down the growth of the brain. It's not solidifying. Oh, people look so much younger now. Yeah, it's called puppification. It's called domestication. You look at a wild dog, wolf, wild dog, right? And you look at a dog we have. Our adult dogs look like they're pups. So, when we start looking at people like, oh, they look younger, well, that's our objective or subjective reality. That's what we're seeing. As long as we don't hold people accountable for their actions and like, oh, it's okay, it's just a dog, you start having that more puppy-like traits. Well, we're going to do the same thing to people, and we can see it. 50 years ago, kids graduating high school looked like 40-year-olds now. Because they were adults. They made adult decisions. We need to redress that balance. Yeah. I guess I had a hard life because from the time I was 16, people just assumed I was 25 to 35. People now guess me at proper age at about 45. I've always looked old. And I'm just saying that people don't really understand that the more decisions you take away from people, the less capable they are at making decisions. Nice. Excellent. I seem to be good at it. That's why I'm kind of just deciding to still play video games here and there, but I think I'm going to focus more on stuff like this because I do take the time to listen. I do take the time to try and come up with a good, reasonable argument before I bring it to the table here. Right? I don't understand the idea. I wouldn't mind doing a show with you, but we're never going to drag Moto into it. I'll tell you that right now. And we can talk about that off. I know because I've tried dragging Moto into it. I'm just saying that we don't understand the full ramifications of pushing back what we choose to accept as adult. Yes. Back in the 60s and 70s, kids were dying because they were getting drunk and, but these were the choices they made. Oh, but it was permanent choices as a child. Like, yes, because they were adults. They were considered adults. I don't think we need to push back what's considered adult any further than 18. I mean, most of the time in high school is boring anyway. I mean, we could probably almost, say that 16-year-olds can make the right decisions if they're raised properly. We see it time and time again. I just think that people really need to understand that if you take decisions off the table, these people won't understand those decisions. I mean, hell, look at CT. He's making some damn good choices, and he's 19. If I remember correctly. Same. I was making my own decisions at 16. My parents' relationship was so on the rocks that they didn't have time to bother with me. And that's what I'm saying is that I don't know specifically what country you're in, but I'm just saying that, America has babied their kids for so long that now we're saying that the human brain doesn't develop until 25. Except for in other countries, these kids are actually doing pretty good. These quote-unquote kids. I was still in public school up until I just walked away. I dropped out of school with a 3.9 GPA. I lost the transcript, but I even used to have the transcript as proof. And the valedictorian had a 3.8 for my graduating year. So if I had stayed, Maybe I would have been valedictorian. I don't know. I didn't care. That's the problem is I just stopped caring because school wasn't teaching me anything. Exactly. Sorry, gossip. I know you're in country. I was meaning somebody out of country. I'm not trying to denigrate other people's accomplishments. I'm trying to say that, CTs from another country. Yeah. Oh, okay. I didn't want, I wasn't trying to say anything bad about anybody here. I'm just saying that we're taking choices off the table and we're wondering why kids are being more kids. Yeah, exactly. Gigi's on a great path. You're doing great. I just, I know what, I've been to other countries and I know what's expected of them. We expect maybe half from our own people. Right? See, I don't have Insta. I just looked at their website. I looked at, what they were doing and who was on the board and all of this. And I'm just like, holy crap. Even the way they write their profiles, it seems almost AI generated to enrage the average person. Well, exactly. Gigi's the one that keeps us all honest. I wish we would understand that protecting people, like, sure, I think it's great that we legislate safety equipment for kids. I damn sure think we should legislate safety equipment for kids. Like, if you have a kid in the car, it's got to be seat belted. I don't think we should be doing it for adults. If an adult is too stupid to put on their seatbelt, they deserve the injuries. Pure and simple. If an adult is too stupid not to, well, let's take, something that happened earlier to somebody here. If somebody's too stupid not to use their phone while they're driving and gets in a car accident, I honestly think we need to elevate people talking on their phone, not just to DUI levels, but almost to premeditated levels. We need to hold people accountable for their decisions. Because to me, that is a premeditated action. You are choosing to endanger everyone around you because you are choosing to use your phone while driving. And I'm not talking about cars with infotainment centers. That's akin to, switching a radio. I'm talking about people that sit there and have the phone up. Ha, nice. Well, gossip, but here's the problem. How many of those, because they've proven that they use bots. That's the only way they got the 70,000 signatures on one of their stuff to begin with. So the people thanking them are probably just them. That's the problem is that this is akin to the old Christian right-wing letter writing campaigns into TV studios, into advertisers. When you come to find out that it's not even individuals doing this, it's one small group. That are having an overreaching, overreach. They overreach, I guess is the best way I can put it. Back in the 80s and 90s, there were these Christian right-wing organizations that would set up letter writing campaigns and just use fake names. Yeah, exactly, like 200K. And who knows how many of those are actually even accurate. We all know botting online is a huge deal. We know it's relatively cheap to buy, especially on Instagram, Twitter, and stuff like that, to buy a few quick comments to make you look more legit. What was it? It was like $50 or something like that for 1,000 comments. And there's whole organizations that they tailor make profiles from hacked profiles so they have even age to them. You know, this is all so ridiculous because people don't understand what they're letting them get away with. They're letting a very, very vocal minority, and they're very, very much a minority, speak for everyone, for the public good. You know, there's a saying, you know, that patriotism is the last refuge of a scoundrel. Well, I think for the common good is also a refuge for a scoundrel. People that are willing to lie, cheat, steal, and sometimes kill just to get their way. Because they believe they're doing the right thing. They don't believe they're the villain when they really are. They're doing the same tactics as any drug cartel, as any propaganda minister. They're using the exact same tactics to make it seem like they have a lot more. But yeah, Tom, here's something you didn't think of. Lawful good is not more evil than chaotic evil. Lawful good interprets the laws as best as they can for the good of people. You're thinking of lawful evil, the people who interpret the laws for their own evil ends. And I absolutely believe that chaotic good alignment is the best alignment there is. You know, I'm just saying that we have these ideas and we forget that these people, collective shout, is lawful evil. They are interpreting laws for their own ends, not for the right people, not for the good of all. They are interpreting them for their own deceptive ends. And it wouldn't surprise me to find out that they're all AI generated. That really behind this is somebody else entirely. Some other group, some other people. They're just using these people either as patsies or it's all AI generated. For whatever that's worth. We often like to think that, you know, okay, that's D&D interpretation of lawful good, which I have always had a problem. Yeah, the thinking of the old paladin archetype, that's actually lawful evil. Lawful good would interpret the laws to the best of their ability for the good of all. Lawful evil adheres to the letter of the law while pushing forward their own ends. The slightest infraction would condemn a person. Well, that's why I just buy a printer. I know a lot of people don't have the money for that, but and if you're going to print out a whole bunch, always get a toner printer. Yes, they're more expensive, but they'll save you money in the long run, and the ink doesn't dry out. You can leave it set fallow for a year, boot it back up, and runs just fine. Run a few test things to clean it out, but that's about it. Toner printers are always best if you're doing literary work. Inkjets are garbage. That's why they're the most popular. I mean, when it's cheaper to buy a printer than to refill the ink for the printer, you know it's garbage. You know, you just trade out the printer. You know, they're disposable. But a toner printer, you know, one, it also prints faster. In my personal opinion. Ink cartridges, all of that, you know, absolute garbage. Yeah, okay. I was going to say, because toner cartridges are so much easier to replace. Yes, it's more expensive for the printer initially, but they last forever. Unlike, you know, inkjet printers, which clog, which do all this, so you just might as well buy a new printer anyway. You know, it's so hard to clean the heads. You can take it to a repair shop. But a toner printer just works. Right? Yeah, it's expensive, but if you buy, for a toner, I mean, my toner cartridges, I can get 1,000. No, it's more than that, like 12,000 pages. Okay, well then, yeah, I mean, obviously do your own cost benefit analysis. I just know that that's why I buy toner printers, because, I mean, sure, I don't get color. I don't print out color pictures. I don't know anybody that still prints color pictures, really. I don't know that many people that actually print. Most people are printing documents anyway, like legal documents or whatnot. That none of those require color. So I just get a black and white toner cartridge or a black and white toner printer. But back to, Collective Shout. I'm still pissed about this. Sorry. This is going to be the focus. Collective Shout is, like I said, a lawful evil company. They are using their outsized power to... They are a minority that are using a very vocal way to enforce their wants on people. Not even needs, just wants. But couching it in such a way as to say it's the benefit for all. No, that's propaganda. That's bullshit. That should be illegal. And they're enforcing it on the whole world when they're just from Australia. I mean, if I remember right, they tried to cancel a whole bunch of people. Where was it? Yeah, there we are. Ban porn on X. Right now. No mercy. Let's see. Child protection experts back our campaign. What child protection experts? And these guys have been around since 2010, so 15 years. And this is the most success they've gotten. See, here's my problem is that also, these idiots that are calling for their problem. Anyway, they're calling it these gamers are actually firing back and they're saying that, like, you deserve rape. No, I don't care. I don't care what these people, like, they don't deserve any violence against them, because then that just makes them martyrs for their cause. That just proves the point. This is stupid. This is ridiculous. Yeah, yes, looking at the worst of the worst here, these guys are just stupid. These women don't deserve any violence against them. Right. Well, and that's the problem also, is that scientific media has been compromised. They're allowed to cherry pick data to fit a premise. This goes all the way back to the chocolate study, that a group of scientists were actually looking at how quickly a made-up article could be seen as actual scientific fact. And, made up this thing about, having a pound of chocolate a month or whatever it was actually healthy. And it just shot through the friggin' roof and it made the circles. And then the scientists came out and said, no, it was a complete garbage article. I wanted to see how fast you guys would fall for it. And everybody fell for it. Not just the media, but people fell for it. Because these people came out as like they were authoritative. They were doing fake, peer-reviewed journals. Even Scientific American has been compromised. One of the oldest scientific industry or institutions that was known for peer reviewing. They have published bunk articles because they've been compromised, because advertisers want because they want to make money. And that's really what all this comes down to. Is they're going to leverage this. They're going to leverage advertisers, because now advertisers are there. So now we're going to have a whole nother, adpocalypse on Twitch, on YouTube, people censoring specifically what I'm talking about now. Anybody talking bad about Collective Shout will probably be censored. This is the world you're going to grow up in. This is the world we're going to have. Yeah, there you go. People don't understand how far this can go. If you're going to make up information, everybody can. All we need is, as proven, about 70,000 signatures, make up a whole nother group. And now we just censor Collective Shout because they don't represent the majority of the people. And I guarantee you that you could get more people behind censoring Collective Shout. Oh, that's funny. That's even worse. You guys understand what I mean? This kind of stuff scares me. That we have compromised everything for advertiser dollars, that now we can't trust anything. Whole YouTube videos are sponsored and they barely even have to tell you. Whole Twitch streams are sponsored by various games or various people, and they don't have to tell you. Ha! That's what I don't understand. Is that they don't get that these things can come up that you will never know until it's too late. Collective Shout's been around for 15 years, and it's only now that we're hearing about them. We all know how this is going to go. They're going to fail miserably. But unfortunately, there's a whole lot of, propaganda out there. Hey, that's a good movie to go watch. Go enjoy it, man. I love that movie. And I'm not big into Westerns, but that's a great one. So you have a good day. Okay. I would have thought you were more Doc Holliday, but that's okay. Johnny Ringo works. With Collective Shout, with this stuff. Ooh, nice. I don't think we understand how much media is on the rocks. What, half of Stephen King's books would be completely censored? Yeah, exactly. That's why. Collective Shout. Tombstone would be out. You want to look at how much media they want gone, given their slated what their criteria is. We might as well just go to Sesame Street, and that's the best we can get. Oh, wait, no, they probably censor Sesame Street because they've actually sponsored LGBTQ themes. Where does this end? When you let a minority control the narrative, where does it end? Sure, a lot of times people don't know what's good for them. People don't know what they should be, how they should act. I'm all for revising how we look at elections. Because I for damn sure don't know who would make a good president. I would have told you that Trump would have been the most asinine president we've ever had, especially after his first term. And now we elected him again. But the world hasn't ended. I still think he's an idiot. Just to be perfectly honest here, I'm not a Trump supporter, but I'm saying that the world didn't end. And things aren't as bad as were predicted. I mean, we still have 4 years to figure that out, mostly. To see how bad it really is, or really will get. Right, it hasn't ended yet. But everybody was declaring that he would start World War III within the first 3 months. He was going to do this within, and he keeps backing down. He keeps doing things, and it hasn't ended yet. Prices have gotten slightly more expensive, but at least in my area, it's not ridiculous. There are certain choices I have to make now that I buy, I have to make different choices because I can't get one things that I bought, and I found equivalents that are basically the exact same thing, only made here at home. Finding that there is actually good stuff here might be a little bit more expensive, but it's not as expensive as people were saying. And I know that's, again, a slippery slope. I could be completely wrong. By this time next year, groceries could be $1,000 per week. I don't know. Well, me personally, I don't know enough about the conflicts in that neighborhood to even have a decision, to even be able to give an opinion. Number two, I'm not from the area. I honestly could care less what happens to Israel, Palestine, Iraq, because I don't live there. I hate to say it, but they're not my people. I don't want people to be exploited, but from the news media that I get, both sides, both Israel, Palestine, all sides of this have issues. All sides have problems. So, I can either speak out against one, get hate from the other side, speak out against the other, get hate from the other side, or just tell the truth that I don't know enough and get hate from both sides. I'd rather just get hate from both sides and just say, look, I don't know enough. It's not, I hate to put it this way, but it's not my problem. I have enough problems here at home. I have enough things I have to deal with here. And that's really what it comes down to is that I don't know enough. So I move on. What am I supposed to do? I'm not going to sit here from, 6,000 or however many miles away it is and try and dictate to some other country what they should and shouldn't do. Hell, I don't even want to dictate, what happens in my own country in somebody else's state because I don't know enough. So let alone, I don't know enough to elect a president. I barely know enough how to elect a mayor. What's happening in my own city, but there's so many factors that I don't even know. So I think we need to go back to representative democracy, like a true representative democracy. Stop making celebrities of politicians. The people only vote for a local representative. And by local, I mean within your certain, district. You get Harold Haroldson over here that you know because you ran across him in real life. He's in your neighborhood. He represents you to the higher up. Maybe he's the one that elects the mayor. They get together and find out what's best for their regions, and that collective argument. They elect the mayor. The mayor then helps elect, the state representative by all the mayors in the city discussing, of all the cities, discussing who would best represent the cities of that state. The states argue amongst themselves and represent, their state to elect the president. That way I can hold the person at my region accountable that things are going wrong. I need somebody else. You're not representing me. That way you have a true plurality of people talking. You get more engaged at the local level than you ever would at the national level, or should, because we don't know enough about national politics. We'd also take away a lot of the power of national politics to polarize people. We could actually stop, the red versus blue bullshit. having to compromise your morals because, oh, I have to vote this way this time because I'm really strong on this topic, even though mostly I vote the other side. Because 90% of people are in the middle. We have a little liberalism. We have a little conservatism. Most of us are just sitting here in the middle going, I don't really like anybody right now. Because they let things like collective shout happen, because they let things like, all this polarization happen, because we're making celebrities out of all of these different politicians. We're giving them outsized power over your thoughts in life. Regardless of what side you fall on, they have way too much power over your thinking. Whether you want to call it Trump derangement syndrome or Biden derangement syndrome. Well, see, there you go. See, but I also believe that there should be a certain amount of socialism ran by capitalism. It's a very hybrid system in my head. And I know that there are tons of things that I get wrong, that it would be rife for one thing or another, corruption here, there, or everywhere, which is why I'm not a politician. But I think we need to guarantee certain rights. Right to housing, right to utilities, anything that, and I consider utilities, internet, phone service, cell phone. That's a utility. Everybody needs one. I think everybody needs the right to housing. And people will make the argument, well, how much housing do they require? I would say about 1,000 square feet per couple, 500 square feet per person. That's how much would be a reasonable requirement for the average person. And you get a voucher from the government. And if you don't like your housing, you take it to another place. If you have the option, you use socialism, but you also use capitalism. You use this voucher that's taken out of your taxes to pay for your housing, to pay for your utilities. If you don't like what somebody's doing, you switch. Number two, we should stop regional monopolies. You can't have, the cable providers, do this garbage that they do. And, split up the country so that they can keep their monopoly in very small areas. That kind of stuff. Well, yeah, pragmatic, So, like you have a decent house. You like what house you live in. Okay, cool. So you keep paying that voucher so that, that landlord or whoever owns the house keeps getting paid. If things start falling apart, he's not taking care of the job like he's supposed to, you move to a different place. Simple as that. Be pragmatic about it. I don't see anything wrong with that. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it shouldn't be that way. I just don't know what else to do. I don't know how else to, to work it to actually get real change in the world. I don't know how that's going to be effective. There could be all sorts of reasons why that's just not going to work. But I honestly think that it would be better, and I would at least feel like I'd have more control than now, where I just have to pay prices that are just, I honestly think, outside what should be paid. I think, how much the housing has gone for is just ridiculous. And it's all because they don't want to build more housing. That kind of thing. It's stupid. It's dumb. Build more housing. You can make more money building housing. Oh, but the average, house. What's up, Ghost? How's it going? But the average housing costs will go down. And, well, then I won't make my revenue because real estate's expensive. Or inexpensive. That's the problem is that you lose so much power if you start reducing price of real estate, because I still think every company is a real estate company. First thing they do when they start expanding is buy more real estate. First thing they do when they start falling down is sell their real estate. It's that kind of thing. Yeah, hey, as I get older, naps are nice, man. I don't know why I resisted them for so long. Yes, hi. Sorry, my cat is sitting here asking for attention.
My mom's right here.
Right. I mean, and also with Collective Shout, now that Ghost is here, imagine how many horror games go bye-bye. We keep finding good independent games through itch, of horror game genre. That's where a lot of these come from that eventually make their way to Steam. And then they get used. They get played. They become very big. So it wouldn't surprise me that the backing behind, Collective Shout is actually AAA studios. And they've also probably got backing from all sorts of other, people that are losing money to independent creation. This is more an attack on independent creators than it is on anything else, like actual decency laws or bullshit like that. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, with them saying, "Oh, you can't put women in trouble. Oh, you can't put children in trouble," like I said before, how many narrators lose their stalking genres? How many you lose, just various scary stories that narrators put on YouTube? That's a whole section of YouTube that goes away. Right. Well, not only that, it's what humanity prefers. I mean, even your romance novels put the women in danger or the men in danger, depending on what genre of romance novel. There's always some conflict. There's always some level of that. So where do you put it? You're basically taking conflict off the table. I mean, shoot. Even certain kids' fairy tales. I mean, think about it. Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Well, that puts a child in danger. Get rid of it. Snow White. Oh, gone. I mean, where do you draw the line? I know these sound like hyperbolic, but yep. Exactly. Saving the damsel in distress. How many forms of media, fiction, all sorts, go by the wayside. Even sitcoms, some of the most sanitized stuff in the world involves women and children being put in some kind of distress. And that's how gray area they put their criteria, was that, portraying women and children in distress. But what's distress? What about a story about somebody breaking down on the side of the road in the middle of Arizona where nobody drives? Is that too much distress? That's a damsel in distress. Even though there's no other outside protagonist or antagonist. Where do you draw the line? And really all it comes down to is that they want corporatized, sanitized media versus independent creation. Now that I'm thinking about it, that's really what I think this comes down to. Is big media coming down on independent media. Right? Or even women to join the military and, sacrifice for their country, for their people. What's to make that happen? And that's what I think a lot of people don't understand when they see these these criteria that they're willing to lose, all for a little security, for a little, rose-colored glasses on reality. I mean, and honestly, I really do, now that I'm thinking about it, now that I've, thought about it, it really has more to do with major media, because, I mean, you look at it, YouTube censors everybody but the news agencies. They can say suicide, they can say kill, they can say murder. Big news agency media can say everything that you can't on YouTube. But independent creators can't. It makes me wonder if that's really what's behind this. Is that legacy media trying to gain the upper hand again? I'm lumping AAA game studios into that. Right. They don't. But they will ban independent creators for saying suicide or rape or murder. They have to demonetize, because it's not safe for kids. Then what's YouTube Kids for? Oh, wait, you've had so many scandals with YouTube Kids, Elsagate 2, just to name two. You're not even policing YouTube very well. Yeah. It is. And I think the problem is that YouTube's not dying. It's the legacy media that's dying, because independent creators have been proven to be better than their sanitized schlock. Most of the AAA studios release garbage, or it's the same game over and over again that people are addicted to. I.e. the 2K games, sports games. Change it slightly, release one every year. I don't even know why people still buy them. I would probably say that probably once every 10 years would probably be best for buying a 2K game. But then again, can we even do sports games? If we put up WNBA, sports game. Right? And Kroger used to be one of the biggest names altogether. And I almost guarantee you it does not have anything to do with profit or loss of profit at that store. It's the fact that the store wasn't making them as much profit as they would like. And yes, gossip, I am still talking about Collective Shout. I'm sorry. It's an annoying friggin' thing, and I think it's basically, I came to the conclusion that it has more to do with legacy media, like AAA game studios, cable companies, and all of that, than it has anything to do with censoring. Because YouTube's not going to censor, legacy media outlets. They aren't now. They're reporting the news, and they're saying all the things you can't say. How long before legacy media, some news agency has their own live stream? Or maybe they already do. I just don't know it. NBC has a live stream on Twitch. I don't know. Do they? I know that they occasionally run lives when something big is happening. Right. I bet they do too. And that's what's also ridiculous is that it really does seem like an attack on independence and not on the big companies, because they're not going to censor the big AAA studios. They're not going to censor WoW. Blizzard would bury them. But as long as they go after independent creators, the small voices, the very minority they say they represent. I don't even want to know what they put out there for TikTok. Damn. Gossip, I appreciate you going through that brain rot for me, because I don't have TikTok either. I don't touch them. Oh my God. This, and I know I've talked over an hour and a half on this. America is not free. America has been bought and paid for several times over. I'm sorry. Right. And that's why I won't touch TikTok, because I would get addicted. It's not because I think I'm better than anybody else and I can resist the temptation. It's like, no, I can't. That's why I stay away from it. But they're both the same freaking thing. TikTok and YouTube. I mean, literally, TikTokers are posting YouTube shorts, and shorts onto YouTube on YouTube are being posted on TikTok. Hey, that's your free right. I just feel for you. Maybe you'll get indoctrinated and hate me later. I don't know. You know, I'm just saying that these supposed independent voices have outsized power than they should have. There is no way that this group, Collective Shout, should have the power over Visa. And there's the thing that really pisses me off. How? I don't understand how Visa and MasterCard can think about cutting their own throat like this. How much money are they going to lose? I mean, people are going to start be looking for other outlets. Like Visa may have just broke their back. People are going to be developing new methods of payment processing, new ways so this won't happen again. You know, all sorts of stuff. And it blows me away. I don't think people really understand how much power this shows a small group can have. Right. Yeah, I heard about the Devil's Den thing, but I don't really cover like true crime. Like I appreciate, I think it's dumb that, you know, there are people somehow making it about themselves just to get clicks and views. But again, you know, I'm not here about brain rot content. And to me, hell, I probably walked that trail at some point. Or I might walk there in 20 years. I don't know. I mean, that to me, if I were to talk about it in more of a way, I would feel like I'm riding on the coattails. So, you know, simple as that. It's just like, I think people are dumb because they're trying to make it about them, not about the people that were actually killed, let alone there was 2 kids, you know, that managed to get away, or maybe the killer just didn't go after kids. Either way, the kids got away, and now their legacy in life is going to be people saying, oh, I walked that trail. I'm so sorry that your parents were there. Or I went and saw where they were, you know, and I even filmed a TikTok about it, so I have sympathy. I know what you went through. No, you don't. Just because you walked a trail doesn't mean, I mean, if we're going by that metric, you know, I'm sure that there's not a square footage somewhere around here, around your neighborhood, that somebody wasn't killed at some point. You know, we're going to have TikTokers, you know, stopping by the side of the road to take pictures with the various, you know, car accident, you know, shrines you see along the road, you know, and saying, oh, I was there. That's just brain rot media.
Put them on Highway 12 so the pickups can inform them.
So what? Come after me. I don't care. You know, I mean, one, I'm not big, I'm not influential, and even if I was, I'm still the same person one way or the other. I act the same way in real life. I'm not going to change anything. I'm sure they're going to try and come after me. So what? They're brain rotted. What are they going to do? How do you classify brain rot? It's one of those things that you know when you see it, but it's very hard to qualify. I would qualify brain rot as anything that makes you turn your brain off. Unless I see that what I was doing was bad, and then I try to, you know, fix the mistake. I mean, what do I classify as brain rot? It's things doing your thinking for you, or that there's not enough there for you to think about, so all you're doing is just consuming. Think about those AI puppy videos that were so big just that not too long ago, where pug saves, baby and all of that, where there's no really cohesive story. You're just getting flashing lights and, cute pictures, but there's not really a story to it. There's nothing really there. That's brain rot. But brain rot is also like J Station's old 3 a.m. videos. Again, there's nothing really there. It's just using something to gain viewership that people are going to click on. It's clickbait. I mean, you look at my YouTube, I don't use clickbait thumbnails. I don't use clickbait titles. Because if I try, I'm not going to stand out. I'm just going to look like everybody else's. So I use what's good to me. At least I can look at it and go, I like that. That's what matters to me. My effort goes into my thinking, not into every other part of it. And yes, I know I am sacrificing clicks for not putting, clickbait on there. So what? One, the people that just click on something without thinking are not an audience I want to engender. It's simple as that. A little while ago, I had a guy trying to get me to put Family Guy on in the background, or Sewage Surfer or something like that in the background, just so they could listen to me talk while looking at flashing lights. And I'm like, go find somebody that already does that. I don't know who they are. I think I've heard the name Brent Riviera, but I don't have any idea. And Topper Guild, no idea. I don't even know what they do, what even their content is. I was perfectly aware that it was Subway Surfer. Okay. I was just making a joke on the fact that it was just all garbage anyway. It was sewage. Anybody that needs to have, 1,000 different flashing lights and everything on in the background. Yes, they are. I could have told you that years ago. And it's not just kids' brains. It's rewiring everybody's brains. Anybody that uses it, it rewires them. There's a reason why I don't touch it. Because it's also rewiring adults' brains. They're losing attention span. I even noticed it in myself when I started, when I started watching YouTube and I was hitting on 15-minute videos. Suddenly, I didn't really have the attention span to watch a 30-minute or a 40-minute video. So I stopped clicking on those. Because I would rather watch a 40-minute video, an essay that people actually spent time on. Sure, it might be lower end content, for clicks. But at least this person takes the time to give a cogent thought process, tells you what they're thinking, and they can take you through the path. It's why I think Shorts is so dumb, but it has a higher density of ad revenue for the companies, not for the creator. And that's why I think it's so hilarious that people are focusing on Shorts, because they are actually reducing their revenue. They're actually taking money from their own hand and giving it to YouTube by focusing on Shorts. Sure, use a few Shorts to get attention, but it better not be the focus of your content, because you're just handing YouTube money and taking money away from yourself. Because I guarantee you the conversion rates of Shorts to your actual videos is lower than they would like to tell you, than they would like to believe. Yeah, exactly. Well, that's why I like my story ones. And I am so sad that there are so few good, creepy story novels like Slay the Princess, like Scarlet Hollow, that there are so few of those, because it gives me the ability to interact with you guys. I don't have to focus super hard on the game itself, but the choices matter, and it's fun to use the different voices. I enjoy doing that, and I'm going to do content I enjoy. I like being able to just pause a game and leave it there. 8-Bit Ryan, I've heard of that name. See, I don't mind, but you know, I don't mind the longer playthroughs, but I hardly ever watch them in one stop. I generally, it's 1 hour. I don't know IGP or is that LGP? I think that's I. See, but I like Markiplier. I like Jacksepticeye. And I like Gab Smolders. I also try to keep to a certain minimum of creators that I watch in each genre. Like there's 3 narrators I listen to. Raven, Marie, and Taroxa's kind of taking the spot, but I used to listen to Let's Read. But also Lighthouse Horror. But it's I always go through a cycle if I have more than one that I like listening to. It's just a cycle. You know, but I always only try to listen to 3 at a time. But Raven and Marie, I generally listen to everything they put out because I like what they do. I like the way they do it. I like supporting them. For video gamers, it's Gab, Markiplier, Jacksepticeye. And then there's various news and stuff like that I listen to. You know, I always try to keep it in rules of 3 so I don't overflood myself with content. I generally have something I always want to watch, but I can go do other things. I love playing horror games because they're fun. I get scared. I move on. You know, it's funny. People seem to love listening to me scream. You know, that's why I have the jump scare sound effect. But, you know, that's that. You know, and that's one of the things I think we're going to lose if we don't find a way to fight back properly. We can't make, collective shout martyrs. We have to beat them with rational thought. We have to beat them with well thought out arguments, with showing people where this is going to lead if they don't codify what they actually mean, and leave it just loose enough so they can just ban whatever they want. Horror games in general. Which I think Itch.io has already reduced their amount of games by, if I remember the number, it was like 30,000. Steam's lost a huge chunk and probably going to lose more as we go along. They might delist certain games you've already bought and paid for. We know that buying doesn't mean owning anymore. So they're going to change the terms of the agreement of purchase. You're going to end up with all of this on a black market somewhere. And if people start, I'll put my game through Patreon, then Patreon's going to go through it. Right. That's actually why a lot of people watch people play horror games. Because they're playing a game that otherwise they would not be able to play because you're alone when you're playing the game by yourself. When you're watching it on a stream, you're together with people. I totally agree. Oh. But, there's, how do I put it? There's a lot of things people don't realize. If we let somebody go after what you don't like, if you agree with them and they go after something you don't like, you're fine with that. Oh, I don't like that. That's fine. I'm not losing anything. But we forget that there's a human behind that. Whatever content, you may not agree with it or whatever. Who are you to tell them why they told that story? They're censoring their freedom of speech. That's wrong. That's just simply wrong. It's not even the whole, it's like, They went after, the person across the street from me. They went after my neighbor, and then suddenly there was no one around to help me fight when they went after me. No, we need to humanize. Why would we need to delete them? Let them put out AI slop games. Just don't buy them. I mean, I'm sorry to say, allow them to do what they're going to do. They want to spend all that time and effort into putting out an AI slop game that nobody's going to buy. Not my problem. Pay with your wallet. Vote with your wallet. If you don't like a certain game, just don't buy it. I don't think we have the right to tell people what they can and can't do. Just because I don't like AI slop games either, doesn't mean I think we need to be able to ban them. We have the freedom to choose. And I choose freedom. I choose allowing people to do the things that I don't necessarily like. Because if I let them control what if I say that my thoughts and feelings about what should and shouldn't happen control what others do, I'm guilty of controlling what others do. I'm guilty of being a dictator, of dictating my wants and needs upon another person. Why would I want to do that? Why would I want to be that person? Do I need some kind of power over others? Like, sure, I hate AI slop games. I think they're dumb. But if somebody wants to play them, they want to play them. If somebody wants to pay for it, they want to pay for it. Simple as that. I mean, I'm not going to control what they want to do. I can't control what somebody does. I can point and laugh at them because they play an AI slop game, and that's the level of difficulty they can handle. It's like, oh, well, I guess you're very bad at games, so you have to go with that one. I'm sorry. Now, if you got tricked into buying an AI slop game because you thought it was a good game, and then you see it's an AI slop game and they somehow don't let you get a refund because of poor advertising practices, that I would, that violates terms of service. Yeah, get rid of that. It's like, okay, well, if you're going to violate the terms of service, yeah, you delete that. But if somebody's very upfront about what they do and that it is an AI slop game and you still buy it, right? That's perfectly fine. If you know what you're getting into and you still, and you don't like it, or you bought it and, then you want to try and complain, that's on you. But if they tricked you into it, that's on them.